more importantly, transfer portal madness. We appreciate, first off, everybody that tuned in with us throughout not only last week, but the weekend and will here on Inside Arkansas, because anytime that there's been a portal that has popped, whether it's somebody committing to Arkansas or any sort of movement, we have gone live, or at least we've been able to put together a video to break it down. And so we really appreciate everyone hopping in. The numbers have been awesome, and we really appreciate that. And be sure to subscribe to us. But fellas, I wanted to start, at least before we get into the in-depth and really specific knowledge of what's going on with the Razorback football team, but just where it stands right now, transfer portal vibes, feeling, who they've gotten, where they're at right now, and where it's going here over the next week or so. What's the feeling right now? I mean, is it about what we expected? Is it worse? Is it better? What's just the feeling right now for Razorback transfer portal?
Well, hang on. Okay. I gotta get serious here. I think it's probably, for me personally, just maybe about what I expected so far. And it's like I'm taking Sam Pittman to his word, though, of what he said on, I guess it was Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday when he said, "Hey, see me in a week and a half, and we'll see how you feel." Okay. So like this time next week is where I'm really going to make my first sweeping judgment on what this is looking like. I think it's kind of a waves thing here, personally. Like the first wave maybe was just those depth pieces that aren't gonna, move the needle, so to say, and there's going to be more of that to come. But like we're starting to see guys trickling in who could be, maybe more impactful pieces. Or I guess at the very least, you could say they've gone from a ton of group of 5 guys to like the power 4, rotation pieces or whatever. So at least schools that you've heard of. So I don't know, like I'm still in wait and see mode. I'm not overwhelmed by the additions they've made so far, but if they pop on, a handful of these guys who they do have coming in here, I'll start to feel a little bit better about where this is headed. I'd still like to see, like the tier A guys. I know Arkansas doesn't really typically get those dudes, but they're still kind of operating in that second tier. Like I like some of the guys who are coming in. Here's what I will say, because I know we're going to talk about a lot more guys. You just don't let Corey Robinson leave this visit without committing. Don't let him leave. The Georgia Tech offensive tackle, get that dude locked up, and then we can start talking about everything else. But I think that's the most potentially impactful piece that they've had on campus so far. Lock him down and take it from there. You'll be all right.
Yeah, there's just not a ton of, needle movers. And when I say needle movers, I mean good or bad. Like, I think that Arkansas has a lot of spots to replace, and that's what they're doing right now. They have to replace those spots. I think anybody who is expecting it to be massively better, they're going to improve at all these spots. I think that's a little bit of a pipe dream. But I also don't think Arkansas is going to be worse at all these spots. Like, I think it's literally just a matter of you've got 24 spots to fill. You just got to go fill out some spots on the 2 deep. And so I think that's kind of what Raylan Sharp is. I kind of think that's what Connie Walker is. And there's going to be more guys like that. You mentioned Robinson Curtis, the offensive tackle from Georgia Tech. That is a guy that I would say, if Arkansas is able to land him, he is one I would say is an actual, without a doubt, upgrade over what Arkansas had at right tackle, which, by the way, Arkansas had one of the worst right tackle situations in the entire country, especially in the Power 5 or Power 4 level. So I don't think that's really saying much, but I do think like that is a guy that would really be like I said, a needle mover for me. But most of these guys, yeah, I mean, like, I know that we all kind of hoped when Pittman said, "Oh yeah, we got all this money, we're going to be awesome in the portal." People kind of hoped, okay, so they really will. They're going to upgrade. They're going to have like a way better roster. We told you in the moment that wasn't a real thing. I think anyone who's being honest with themselves would know that's not going to be a real thing. So look at what you really are going to have for the majority of these guys are guys that either are at Power 4 schools and we're not playing a ton, or you're going to have guys that are at Group of 5 schools who played a ton, who, that's what you're looking for. That's what you're hoping to get. That's what Arkansas got in Raylan Sharp. That's what they got in Connie Walker. Kendrick Law's another guy on campus. He fits that criteria as well. If you want to get those real big-time pieces of guys that are actually playing and actually good at Power 4 schools, that's going to cost you a little bit of money, and we just are not under the impression that Arkansas is going to want to spend a ton of money. Will they do it for a piece or two here or there? Maybe, but I agree with Curtis where it's like you kind of just have to wait and see how it plays out and then see how you feel about the roster. But I feel pretty similarly now than I did a few days ago, and then I did even a week ago, and so we'll see how this week plays out. But I would say it's gone about how I thought it would go.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think for me, it's more about kind of still holding out hope that there's going to be some guys that maybe aren't being considered, or maybe it's kind of come onto the scene late or whatever it is, and people start really getting excited. And I echo what you guys said about Corey Robinson. To me, Arkansas, looking at the visits and who they had over the weekend, and even the ones that reportedly are arriving today. You got the running back from Texas State, Mahdi, or is it Maddie, whatever. But you got him. You got Glass, the offensive lineman from Oklahoma State, and also Kendrick Law from Alabama, which I know we'll talk about. But to me, I'm like, if you're going to get, you're obviously, comparatively speaking, you're not going out and you're not getting the home run visits and the guys who are interested. Like, say, Ole Miss is. Ole Miss, I feel like, is Eric Musselman now with the portal guys. Like, anybody that's worth a flip in the portal is visiting Ole Miss, it seems like. Like, that, it's just unreal, which, again, we'll talk about in a second. But to me, the ones you are going to have on campus that are they world beaters? Are they just going to change the entire landscape of everything? No, but a guy like Corey Robinson, get the ones that you're at least getting on campus that are high-quality guys. You have to, because if you can't simply get somebody like him, who's a really good player, mind you, but obviously there is enough there to where he's taking a visit to you. He is taking time and coming to you. So there is interest. He's interested in coming to play for you. If you can't lock that down, who can you lock down? Like, who can you get on this campus to play for your team next season? So I agree. You got to get the guys that can not only be immediate starters, but are proven immediate starters, and guys that can really help in particular spots, in this case, on the offensive line, to do whatever it takes. If you talk about overpaying, if it takes a little bit more to overpay for this guy, if you feel like that's what's going to take to get him, then get him, because you're running out of options and you don't exactly have a bunch of high-quality players at the door lined up trying to beat in and get in there and try to take a visit with you right now. You just don't have it.
Yeah, and I think just to give a little bit of context on how I'm evaluating this for folks who are listening, I want to see Arkansas upgrade this roster. Like, I've seen the outroar of what a 6-6 season was. And so I know what's out the door from the 6-6 football team. I know what lies ahead in terms of a much more difficult and challenging schedule. So for me, I'm not even looking at it so much as, okay, this guy comes in, he can probably replace what you've lost here. No, like, you need to replace it and outproduce it if you're going to really get better moving forward. I mean, can we all agree on that? So my standards are probably a little bit higher. So, like, I don't want to come across as, some of these guys that maybe they're picking up where I'm like, oh, this dude sucks, he's not any good or whatever. But I'm talking about, the end product needing to be, it needs to be obvious that you have upgraded your situation from where it was this past year. It ain't about replacing. If Arkansas was coming off of a 9-3 season, fine. Yeah, just go out and replace what you lost, and maybe you'll be just as good. But it has to be better. I think that's what everybody's kind of expecting. Like, in fairness for Sam Pittman's job and everything, that just kind of needs to be the case. So, like I said, I'm excited about the potential of some of these running backs who visit. Eli Sanders, I like him. Ismail Mahdi, I like him. You probably need both of them. I like Kendrick Law as a piece, but you probably need him and Omega Blake and another one, to really get your situation going at wide receiver. You need multiple tight ends. You need some big-time offensive linemen. You need an entire defensive line. You need an entire secondary. You got a lot to do here, so it's very much a waiting game for me.
Yeah, and Curtis, I'm glad you set the expectation. And look, this is not revisionist history, and it's not us moving the goalposts, because at the very beginning of this whole portal season, even before all the exits, we said we felt like Arkansas was going to have have a substantially more talented roster in order to improve their record, because the schedule is just much harder. Like, this past season's schedule was actually pretty favorable. So even if you took this exact Arkansas team and you just took them into 2025, I think they would probably have a worse record just based on the schedule, or at the very least, like, you'd be like best case scenario 6-6. So that's kind of what we said at the beginning of portal season, was that Arkansas is going to have a more talented roster. So I know that everybody, is under the impression that we're very negative and that we, are just, we hate the Hogs and all that. But again, we set the expectation at the beginning of portal season, and you guys concurred with that. Like, when all these guys that exited out, you guys said, well, we'll be able to upgrade there. We'll be able to upgrade in some of these spots. And that's what Sam Pittman said publicly Thursday. So it's like, the standard has been set. And so if Arkansas is able to do that, awesome. We will gladly see that. But I just, again, Curtis, going back to the expectation you set in the standard and kind of where you have the bar, to say I would be stunned if Arkansas did that, I would be very, very stunned if Arkansas actually did improve their roster, just looking at all the pieces that they have to replace and also up the production of. And again, it just is a lot that you have to do. I mean, because even if Arkansas even if they landed Kendrick Law, landed Corey Robinson, landed both of those running backs, and landed Jay Platt, the tight end, and Atkins, the tight end, you still have a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball. You still have minimum 3-4 defensive linemen. And so you just start doing the math, and I'm like, okay, I think you can kind of see why this coaching staff isn't in a position to just spend money willy-nilly because they have so many spots to fill. And ultimately, I guess the fans can decide for themselves. Like, you see the list of people that Arkansas has in on visits. You see kind of the quality of guy that they're looking at and the kind of guys that they're bringing in. How does that make you guys feel? Do you feel like that's going to be like a roster that really competes at a high level in the SEC?
I think I will just say real quick, another thing I wouldn't say it's changing things for me, but I think it has to be considered because a lot of the conversation has been, hey, whatever, like these guys off a 6-6 football team, they're out of here. They weren't that good anyway. They're all going to SEC schools. I mean, like the three best guys who've entered have all gone to Ole Miss. Brad Spence is going to Texas. Josh Braun is at Kentucky. Nico Davier is getting ready to go to Texas A&M. I mean, so the guys that you were losing are going to your competitors, and in a lot of cases, schools that have been better than you at football here recently. So that also, to me, maybe increases my expectations a little bit in terms of they might actually need to get a better caliber of player to replace these guys than I anticipated because they are all going to bigger schools. This ain't like dudes are just dipping out and going to group of 5 places. They're going to the SEC.
Yeah, because that's like with like the Brad Spence one, for instance. You're talking about a team in Texas. Who's Texas? They're in the college football playoff. Steve Sarkisian, really good coach, all things considered. We'll see what they actually do in the playoff. They're not taking players just to take them. It's not like, we needed an extra body here in the linebacker spot. Oh, this kid from Arkansas, let's bring him in. Like, they're not just going to be getting a guy for the sake of getting a guy. It's because they feel like there's at least a caliber of talent there that can help them in some capacity, whether it's just being a starter or just being someone who can add depth. There's value there. And that's what you don't want to see, is that programs that are much better than you, or at least in a better situation right now, not only taking your players, but also being where, hey, these guys are valuable. These are guys that we feel like can help us out. And then you're stuck kind of holding the bag a little bit. You're stuck just hoping and praying, which kind of works out perfectly for our Alumni Hall question of the day, presented by Alumni Hall. Any sort of Razorback apparel that you need for the holiday season, you better order it now at alumnihall.com. You have it shipped directly to your door. It's for men, women, kids, all the nicest apparel. Southern Tide, Peter Millar. They have Nike. They have Columbia. Everything. It's incredible to see the amount of Razorback apparel. So check them out today at alumnihall.com, as well as locally here in Fayetteville, 3417 North College Avenue. It's Alumni Hall, the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. So I asked the question, guys, just out to the masses. Do you believe the Razorback football roster will be more talented, less talented, or about the same next season as it was compared to this past season? And I'll admit, I went in there with an idea of what people were going to say, but a little bit different from what I anticipated. 47% of you say about the same, saying the talent level will be about the same next season. 34% of you say less talented, and 19.5% of you say more talented. So I'll be honest, guys, I thought that the majority of people would say less talented just given the circumstances, but it seems that Razorback fans, at least according to this very accurate and specific poll, Razorback fans are saying we're expecting about the same level of guys next season that are good enough to go 6-6.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you ask me right now, just based on what they brought in, again, like we're a week into this, what they brought in so far, kind of who's on the board right now. I see probably less talented. I think there is a pathway to being, honestly, if I just telling you guys the truth, I think that they're going to wind up being just about as talented as they were this year. I think that's probably where this is headed. I guess what I'm trying to say is I see probably a more clear pathway right now on Monday, December 16th for them being less talented than I do for them being more talented, just based on what we know right now. Long ways to go. That's how I feel today.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in between the about the same and less talented. To your point, Curtis, I don't really see a case as it stands today, December 16th. I don't think you can make a case that Arkansas is more talented or on track to be more talented. I can see the case for less talented, and I can see the case for about the same. And I think that's kind of where, like, again, ultimately, I think Arkansas is going to end up just kind of replacing what they had outgoing. And so I do think you're probably looking at about the same. I also do think it's worth noting that two of the more talented players on this past season's roster would be Jalen Braxton and Patrick Hoodies, who played a combined 5.5 games. So again, like even though Arkansas's roster might have been more talented, we didn't necessarily get to see a lot of that. But Arkansas, I believe, according to 24/7 Sports, Arkansas was number 26 entering the season in team talent composite. Now that's not an exact science. It's not a perfect thing. A lot of it's based on high school recruiting rankings. So as it stands today, I think Arkansas is probably going to end up a little bit below that, but I think we're still looking at probably like a top 30 team in terms of talent. But we'll see how it works out. I will also just clarify, I think that there's still like, even if I'm admitting, I think Arkansas is going to have a less talented roster, I do think there's a case to be made Arkansas could have a quote-unquote better team. Maybe
Agreed.
not necessarily win-loss, but like I think there's a case to be made. But I do think that when it comes to April, when it comes to May, and we're talking about this team and expectations, I think whatever case you're going to make, it has to start with they have less talent, but and then you can fill in that blank with the camaraderie, year 2 Bobby, year 3 Travis, or better team chemistry, or, everyone's on the same page. All those things. And all those things, by the way, are extremely valid. Like, I'm not here to tell you they're not. But just where we're at right now in transfer portal season and roster building season, I think if you look around the country, the writing's on the wall that Arkansas is going to have a little bit less talent than a lot of their peers.
I'm so glad you said that because I was getting ready to. I agree. There's something very valid to that. The only problem is Sam Pittman can't get away with that this year because he's been selling I love this team. This is different. That's kind of been the spiel for the last few years here. Ain't nobody trying to hear that, whether it winds up being true or not. Ain't nobody trying to hear that. It's like this roster build from a sheer, what do they look like on paper when it's all said and done compared to what they looked like on paper last year, probably carries way more weight and meaning with the fan base than maybe it even should, but that's just kind of the situation that he's put himself in at this point.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing, just to be honest, guys, gut feeling that this is going to be a more talented roster. I really don't see it. And I'm not trying to be negative, but maybe I am. I don't know. But it's just, I cannot look at what they lost and currently where it stands of who they could potentially gain and just say with full confidence that, yeah, it's going to be just as good. I just don't see it. I don't see someone as good as a Patrick Hoodies on there. And I'm not talking about just that specific position. I'm just talking about the talent level in general. I don't see somebody like that or Jalen Braxton or Luke Has or anything like that. I just don't see it. And not to mention the fact, guys, and this is something that I've failed to mention too, but, at least last season, you knew you had Landon Jackson. You knew you had a bona fide all-SEC first team or potential All-American on your team, which I know it's only one, but it takes more than that. But you at least had that. You don't have that at all. There's not a single player that you can at least say, well, we at least have this guy coming back next season because this guy is an All-American potential or anything like that. You don't even have that. And that's where my concerns have really come into play because where it stands, unless something changes, guys, when SEC Football Media Days comes around in July, and everyone's selecting who's going to be on the preseason all-SEC teams, I don't think Arkansas is going to have one single one on first or second team at this point. It could be wrong. Maybe something pops. Maybe something changes. But I just don't see that happening. And that's where the talent level, because I'm just not talking about transfer portal talent. I'm talking about just the team in general and their talent. I just don't see where that's going to come from right now. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and you might be right because I think Cam Ball's a really nice player. I don't think he'll be all SEC. Xavier Sori had a really nice season, but there's a lot of really good linebackers in this league. Taylor Green ain't gonna be a top 2 quarterback, So yeah, I mean you might be onto something there.
I mean, let's just ask the question. So in 2024, Arkansas goes 6-6. Who were the most talented players, like the best and most talented players on the team? You say Andrew Armstrong, Landon Jackson, Quinn and Jackson, maybe Sori. I think you could throw Sori in there. I think there's a real case to be made. Cam Ball, you could even make a case. But I do think Braxton has Kudus. Like you just go on down the line. Who were like? And look, fans, if you disagree, who do you think? Like maybe there is somebody I'm missing. But again, like it's not even all guys that exited the portal. Like just the entire core of the team that made Arkansas 6-6 is gone. And so it's like, maybe Arkansas will replace. Maybe they'll get a better version of Andrew Armstrong. Maybe they'll get a better version of Landon Jackson. Maybe they'll get a better version of Jaquindon Jackson. I just don't really see that happening right now.
No, I don't at all. So that's where kind of I stand on the situation. But I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see something different. I'd love to see somebody really come in and make a splash. And who knows, maybe that'll end up happening here in a bit.
Sorry, I was just gonna say it's also like a situation where, I mean, we're doing the wait and see thing now to just see how it all shakes out. But no matter whether we like it or not, guys, it's going to be a wait and see until the season, because they're going to have these dudes where if they pop, then okay, you might be onto something. If they don't, then you might be screwed, and you're just not going to know until we get in the games. Like Jaquan McCoy, the big offensive lineman. He hasn't taken a snap of college football, but he's super, super talented. If he's ready and he pops, wow, all of a sudden your offensive line looks a hell of a lot better. If he's not ready, and then it's like, okay, well, how did you feel the rest of this? Let's say if they got a Kendrick Law, for example, super, super talented dude, but he, he put up less production than Tyrone Broden, like Andrew said off the air earlier. If you take his entire career and he's done what Isaiah Satania did last season, is it because he was buried? Whatever. Like, what I'm saying is you're hoping for like a Drew Sanders arc from this guy coming from Alabama, like to be a dude, to realize his potential. They're going to have several guys like that. Some of them will hit, some of them won't. But even after they have the entire roster, it's going to be very much all right, well, let's see how all these guys look in the spring. And then after they do whatever against Alabama A&M, we'll feel really, really good about it. But it's going to be something that's going to play out over the course of the entire year, which is kind of frustrating, but it's just a situation they're going to be in, I think.
I will say, if I can offer some sunshine here real quick, we're using that word talent a lot. And look, Jaquan McCoy hasn't played a snap, very unproven. He definitely has that big T word. He definitely has talent. He's a guy that could play in the NFL, frankly. I mean, you just look at him. Based on what he was in high school and kind of what he looks like, I mean, if that guy played in the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Corey Robinson is a guy, if he played in the NFL, wouldn't be surprised at all. You bring him in. Kendrick Law's another one, hasn't produced a ton, but he has that big T word. I do think like there's a case to be made. The only way to win in the SEC is to have NFL players. It really is the only way to do it. And it doesn't matter how you get them. It doesn't matter if they come from Group of 5 portal. It doesn't matter if they come from Power 4 portal. It doesn't matter if you develop them in your high school class. You just have to have NFL players. And I feel like Arkansas this past year had some NFL players on the roster. I mean, they're going to have a few guys get drafted. I think that's really the kind of lens we need to be looking at this. Do any of these guys that we're talking about have a chance to play in the NFL? Because that's what you have to succeed.
Well, and we'll get to your chats here in a second, folks. To your point, Andrew, I probably get annoying with how often I bring this up, but to me, it's the greatest example of what you just said. If you go back to that 2014 Razorback football team of that defense that they had, that was so good statistically. It was 10th in the country, I believe. And the reason that's always referenced is because it was almost an anomaly that Arkansas had a top 10 defense in the country. It just doesn't happen very often. And Hoover's your defensive coordinator. It was Rob Smith. Now, I remember at the time, I was like, man, Rob Smith, this might be this dude knows his stuff. He might be the defensive coordinator that everybody's dreamed of and everything. And not to say he's a bad coach, but as time went on, you started to see, it wasn't as much Rob Smith as it was having NFL players on the roster. You had Trey Flowers. You had Darius Philon. You had a Tevin Mitchell. You had Martrell Spate. You had a guy like Dietrich Wise. Like, you had guys that are either currently in the NFL or had a pretty good stint in the NFL, or in some cases even drafted into the NFL. And that's what made that defense great. I mean, talent can make any coach look amazing. And that's one of the reasons why so many times you see a coach that was under Nick Saban, they don't always translate to being great head coaches. Yeah, there are exceptions. Like Kirby Smart, for instance. Yes, I think Kirby Smart is a phenomenal coach, but it also helps he's at Georgia where he's able to get the high-level talent. Every coach can look a lot better with the talent around him. And Arkansas just doesn't have that much NFL talent on the roster right now. Could change, but at least at this point in time, they don't.